three different topics. Jim wants to start with education, and then we're going to chime in at the end of his and put our input into it, and also ask questions to him concerning it. And then after that, we use the same format with option number 2. I will talk about the self-help group, fraternal group, and then Tolbert and Tilden sit there and get their input. And then last, Tolbert will talk about the civil rights movement here in Jefferson County. So that's the format we're going to use. So Jim, you want to start with education?
Yeah. First, I'm going to start out like I've been doing for the last how many years. We want you to realize that what you see up here, 3 individuals born in the 1930s, born and were able to see the last of the slaves in Jefferson County. We were little people, they were old, they were dying out, but we are proud to have been born in the 1930s. Although we got some age on us now, we sit up here and fall asleep, you don't understand. But we were fortunate and glad so that we can, and we are the last generation of African Americans in this county that can actually span that gap between slavery and where we are now. I want you, I just want everybody to understand that. I want to talk a little bit about the education, and perhaps I'm going to have to go a little further than Reconstruction, if you don't mind. 1865, war was over, slavery was over. Freedmen's Bureau moved in, and this is when all of this began. Nathan Brackett, who was an agent for the Freedmen's Bureau, started a school in Rutherford. Also in '68, Free Will Baptist missionaries came and were assigned different places to start the schools. When they got here, things were pretty rough because the local people did not want the Freedmen's Bureau here anyway. And then when these women came from the north to start the schools, there was a lot of conflict. The Freedmen's Bureau arguing and discussions between the people in the school districts and all that. But that did not stop these African Americans who we would always say that we think that these people were more, I don't know how to put it, advanced, I say, than a lot of people, especially in the South and so forth, because they got busy. When it was arguing among the school board and the Freedmen's Bureau, the African American community in Shepherdstown, Rutherford, and Charlestown had already began raising money because they were going to start the schools anyway. The Freedmen's Bureau told them, you don't have to do this. The Freedmen's Bureau is going to see that everything is going to be done the way they want. Regardless, they still raised money. But there was one incident with the Freedmen's Bureau and local people. The black community in Middleway, what was it called, in Smithburg, what, in a little section called Sladtown, they met to have to discuss raising money. A member from the Freedmen's Bureau went to Middleway to meet with these people, and when the meeting was over, someone shot at an agent, missed him. He got back home and reported it, but wasn't anything done. But that's just to show you how progressive these people were, that they were going to do something regardless. When the Free Will Baptists missionaries came, they had a lot of problems. Sarah Jane Foster wrote in her diary and book things that had happened day by day, just about. The woman that came to Charlestown was Ann Dudley, and there were threats out on her life if she came here to Charlestown to start a school. It was so bad that they had to escort her from Harpersburg here because of what might happen to her. And when she got here, she went to various white boarding houses and homes and asked if they would let her room and board there and help her to start a school. Everybody turned her down, but she had to turn to the black community. And she met this family living on Liberty Street and went and asked them if they could help her. And it was, can't think of the name right now. Dixon. And she said, yes, that you can start the school right here in my basement if you want. And that's how the first school in Charlestown got started. They fixed up a little cabin in the back of his property for her to live in, to teach in, to sleep in. Everything was done in that little cabin. And when we were young, going to school, that cabin was still back there on that property. We didn't know, where we lived. We didn't know, we just, the more I think about it, I'm glad that I do remember that. But anyway, she lived by herself. And whenever she had to go to the post office or anything, she had to have 3 or 4 big African-American men to escort her, to protect her. And at night, the townspeople would come by, they would throw rocks at her little cabin and call her names and threaten her. And Sarah Jane Foster said in her book that these women had to sleep with a club and a pistol by their bed, and you know that these are Christian people and all that, but I couldn't picture Ann Dudley with a pistol. But they said that this, is what happened. The one group went to Martinsburg, and another group stayed in this area. In 1867, the school had already been started in Charlestown and Shepherdstown and all that. But in 1867, John Storr from Maine donated $10,000 toward a school for African Americans in the South. He didn't say where, but through the Freedmen's Bureau, Nathan Brackett, and the Free Will Baptist people, that school started at Harpersburg. And I can't think. But anyway, in February, he made the offer, and all that business was taken care of. And in October of '67, the school opened and accepted its first student. And I don't know if Perks know about this or not, but Stewart did not live to see it open. Am I right? Right. Okay. But anyway, they started this school, and the purpose of it was to teach these students to become teachers and preachers. All the schools were being started in churches and everything, and they had to carry on the business of teaching and preaching. In 1868, there was a mass baptism here in Charlestown at Everett Run. And we believe that a lot of those people that were baptized would become our teachers and preachers. And we remember when we were coming up, we used to baptize over here. I thought you mentioned about it. But anyway, that played a pretty big role in this whole thing. In 1868, Freedmen's Bureau began to leave the area. And the missionaries also began to leave the area. In '68, the officials from Washington made their last trip through the state to make sure that everything was going the way it should have been. They stopped in Jefferson, Rutherford, on through the state. The agent that came to Charlestown met with the officials, and while he was talking, someone slipped him a note, and it was from the Ku Klux Klan. But he still insisted that these schools and things had to be done. Around 1870, the Jefferson County School District Board of Education, they had districts then, completed the school up on the hill. And they bought land out there, we call it Johnsontown now, I forget what it was called, to start a school in Johnsontown. And we don't have time to get into that, but that was very important to start this school in Johnsontown. I don't know how many know anything about Johnsontown. A historic town founded by African Americans and so forth. One day maybe we can get somebody that's written about it and the relatives, distant relatives, to talk about that, but that was very important. Also in 1870, the Charlestown District Board of Education hired their first teacher. Now, the first school taught here was taught by an ex-slave, Enos Wilson. He was a student at Shepherd. That's the school on Liberty Street. And there was an article in Harper's Magazine about an ex-slave who's a teacher now with a freedman in Charlestown, West Virginia. The Jefferson County Board School District hired its first teacher. His name was Littleton Lorton Page. He was a teacher, and he also was an ex-slave. He had escaped from South Carolina. That school is located on Harwood Avenue, and it is still there. Now, the missionaries, teachers left, the board of Freedmen's Bureau left, and after the mass baptism, the Charlestown District Board of Education hired L.L. Page, and there were all types of information in the newspaper about such a good job he was doing, and they really complimented him. All districts just about at that time were producing schools for students grade 1 through 8. In 1880, Stowe College, which was really getting half a name at that time, Frederick Douglass came to Harpersburg. He was on the board of trustees of the Stowe College. And he came to talk about John Brown on the 14th anniversary, I think, of the opening of the school. And he praised John Brown and let people know just how important that raid on Harpersburg was, although it was unsuccessful. But I tell you this because there is always a personal thing attached to a lot of things. Let you know that people are human regardless of the wars and all that type of stuff. And this stuck with me for a while. When Frederick Douglass finished speaking, on the podium with him was Andrew Hunter. Andrew Hunter was the prosecuting attorney that prosecuted John Brown. When Frederick Douglass finished talking, Hunter got up and went to Douglass and shook his hand and congratulate him on the speech. And he said if Robert E. Lee was here, he would also offer you his hand. And I thought that was sort of the human element in this whole thing. And that stuck with me for a while. In 1900, around 1901, the West Virginia legislative group passed down a law stating that all districts in every county in the state had to provide schools for the African American kids from age 6 through 21. And an article appeared in the paper around that same time in opposition of integration. And I walked and thought, now I said, if that hadn't happened, if they had started schools back then, and regardless of color, grade, or what, those little districts could have been integrated. It's just a thought. During the 30s, the Great Depression, a lot of African Americans in Jefferson County had little farms. They owned little farms. They had homes. They were very progressive. I'm gonna forget where I'm at after I finish saying this, but bring me back. But during the time when there was a contraband camp at Rutherford, a teacher had transferred from Fort Monroe down in Virginia, where there was a contraband camp. She transferred up here to Rutherford, and she made the statement that African Americans in Jefferson County were far more advanced than the African Americans in the South. And that also stuck with me for a long time. The people here after slavery, they mostly stayed with the owners. The owners sometimes gave them a little piece of land, gave them a few bucks, and that escalated. And in the 1930s, I think it's in the 32 Blue Book, there were more African American farmers in Jefferson County than any other place in the state. There were like 52. 20-some owned their own farms. These people, like I said, mostly went back to their owners, and they got a little piece of land, and they began to farm. But the Depression, everything failed. We remember it, and a lot of them began to migrate to the north, which made the school systems, a lot of these schools where these African American kids were, they had the cousins, and these students began to be sent to other districts. Also about that time, the school districts combined and became the Jefferson County Board of Education. Correct me if I'm wrong, it was about that time. And also about that time, a group of African Americans from the Shepherdstown, Rutherford, and Charlestown approached the board and asked them if they would build a school in Charlestown, because the population had started regaining itself, and these little schools had outgrown themselves. Stowe College had stopped its high school program. So the students, once you graduated from 8th grade, either had to, with store closed, you had to go out of town or go to work. So the Jefferson County Board of Education decided to, I'm getting ahead of myself, to start a high school. Jefferson County board, the group of parents and teachers went to the board and asked them to start a high school because once these kids left 8th grade, they didn't have any place else to go. And the school up on Eagle Avenue, Herwood Avenue, was built in 1929, and it was a 2-story auditorium and a big school. And the board told them, if you want to and can find a way, do it. Because of the depression and all that, say, you know, we can't be much help to you. Those teachers, some of those teachers had 4 degrees, and some of them had master's degrees that were teaching in those elementary schools. So they took on extra jobs, extra work. I think Ms. Watkins, who we knew real well, could teach elementary history, and she could also teach secondary history. Mr. Danridge could teach chemistry, he could teach biology, he could teach all that type of stuff. These teachers were pretty talented. So they took on extra duty and all that, and they started a high school up there on Herwood Avenue in that big building, right there we had from grades 1 through 12, right there in that building. And they named that school, the board named that school, Eagle Avenue High School. That went on until just before World War II. That building had outgrown itself. The students were just, we were there, grades 1 through 12, and it just had gotten just too crowded. We had responsibilities when we were coming up to help to not raise, but help these youngsters, 1st, 2nd, 3rd graders and all that. We did all that. That's the whole another story within itself. But anyway, we asked if they would put an addition on their school. And if you ever see any pictures of the old Page Jackson, Eagle Avenue, there was an addition put on just for the high school. And this was during at the beginning of World War II. So the board put the addition on, and that also outgrew itself. So in 1950, the African American Parent Teachers Association approached me and asked them to build a new school, and the board agreed. The old school, with the addition, the first class graduated from that in 1942, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger as far as the student was concerned. So 1950, the board agreed to build this high school, built it in where the student would have their own building, and that was right over here on Jefferson County Board of Education is right now. And the first class, the last class to graduate from the old Page Jackson, I was in that class, and Tolbert was in the class before then. So George, we got some history. You can't hang out with Alvin, my brother, because you were in new school. And 1952, the new school opened over here, and that was about the beginning of the end. In 1954, with the Supreme Court decision, these schools began to close. In Jefferson County, there were an elementary school in Shepherdstown called Eastside, an elementary school in Harpersburg called Grandview, an elementary school in Charlestown called Eagle Avenue, and the high school. The integration came in '54. Things slowly began to change. The student began to slowly integrate into what we call the white schools. In 1965, Page Jackson High School, Eastside, Grandview closed. We were told that Page Jackson at that time was the smallest black school left in the state. I have a person just walked in here who was part of that, and that's Tobin's back there. When we closed, we had finally were able to participate against the local white schools. Before then, we had to go down and play against teams out of Washington, Maryland, monster school. But we did have teams, and that's another thing. That's the reason we love Page Jackson so much. We can talk about that another time. But anyway, there was one school left in 1965 that didn't close, and that was Eagle Avenue. In 1966, Eagle Avenue finally closed the doors. And when the last group left out of there, school was closed. And about 3 months later, that building, that icon, that building that had nursed us all the way through, caught on fire and burned to the ground. That was a sad moment for the African Americans in this area, because it brought an end to 101 years of black education in Jefferson County. And I must say that also brought an end to a lot of other things that we miss to this day, because it played an important part and we loved it. In 1983, a group of people got together and had a reunion. And instead of being class reunion, we had a school reunion. It was so successful, people came from all over the country. And I was on the committee, and I was really surprised how many people came and how many people cried and how many people said, don't let this ever die. 1984, the Secretary of State, we became organized and formed the Jefferson Page Jackson High School Alumni Association. Mission to continue to keep this history alive. And I'm so proud that I'm part of it, and a lot of us in here are part of it. I have given you a quick rundown on what happened. And Doug Perks, a friend of mine, said, this is Reconstruction. I said, Doug, I got to take it a little further. So he allowed me to take it a little further than just the Reconstruction. Because right to this day, with the integration, and I'm going to say it, so many things we missed. We missed the school. We missed the little black community. We missed all of that. And I'm going to make this statement. There are people that could still become, it would help them to have experienced it. And I'm through.
I think we need to expand about just a little bit more education. I have some things I'm sure to talk to too. The key actually to education and the black community was what really kept us going. And it was the black teachers. Most of them didn't have a master's degree. Most of them just had a bachelor's, no degree at all. But it was the black teachers that really struggled and really forced the students to really achieve. Not just in Charlestown, but also in Shepherdstown. I know for a fact that in the summertime, these teachers would walk, for example, Miss Elsie Clinton used to walk on Potato Hill. She would walk from there to out in Dogtown, almost a mile and a half, and would carry magazines like Look and Life to bring to the student, and somebody got to read it and cut out articles and so forth. Also, the condition they worked under those times. For example, and they made the best out of it. So like, for example, Mr. Damage had a laboratory, teaching science lab, with no gas and no equipment. Yet he'd read the book and say what's in it, and therefore we have to imagine exactly what this project was all about. What people also don't realize, what these teachers have really done was almost every student that finished Page Jackson High School had an opportunity to go to college. I was in the class of 53, and there was 21 people in our class. And I think all of them could have gotten a scholarship. I ranked 21st out of 21. And I looked up made it to college. And there was almost all of those students went to college. But the key to it was the black teachers are the ones that really pushed it and made it really work. And like I said, and they really taught the students, like Jim, myself, and Tolbert, that we had to succeed. There was no choice. They forced us. They were in the community, not just in the school, but they're also in the churches, and they talked to your teachers, and they talked to your parents and the preachers, and so they really pushed us in education. But let me back up a bit more on education, because see, the other part to it also, there was sports and so forth. You know, Mr. Damage, he was a science teacher. He didn't know the first thing about sports. But what he did, he took on a football team. And back in the 40s, he had a football team going and played different schools. And I can recall very well them playing on a football field with sewer running right in the middle of the field. I can remember other teams coming here playing softball, had to play on a sewer-related field out there. I can also recall that there was no place of practice. And you may not believe it, but Stewart College at that time would come down this Page Jackson field here, and they would practice football and play football against the Page Jackson High School team. I can also recall in 1953 when some members of Page Jackson actually played football with the Stewart College team against schools in Washington, D.C. So it wasn't the football players at Stewart, and we had a few here in Page Jackson. So therefore, that history was also there. Also, Mr. Fleming came here, and something we never knew about at that time was homecoming. And it was the first time we ever had a homecoming queen. And I think we also had a parade. I think they had about 2 or 3 cars come through Main Street. This must have been back before it was in Rutherford. Had perhaps one of the first homecoming parades here in town, a homecoming queen. Those are some of the things that that are part of education. Basketball. You know, there was no basketball. There was no gymnasium at Page Jackson or Eagle Avenue before they moved to Page Jackson. And Mr. Fleming and Mr. King said we need a basketball team to compete with other schools. And everyone, the public thought they were crazy. But what Mr. Fleming did is put some hoop up in his shop, which is small in this room right here, and we practiced. And then after that, we had to get hitchhiked a ride, and actually hitchhiked a ride in the wintertime down to Harper's Ferry, Stewart College barn. And that barn they had for a gym was no bigger than something right here also. So we had to practice there to play basketball. And then we were fortunate enough when we had basketball games slated, we would play right down here in Charlestown High School. We were allowed to play basketball games there. However, we could not share. All we could do is just go in and play basketball and leave. Other words, we were all hot and sweaty during the time. All we could do is just put on our jacket and go home. And football was the very same way. So those are also some parts of education that, you know, I think that really stand out. But the most amazing thing in education back in those days